My name is Dan Yakes. I'm a local historian. I came to history through the formal processes of going to college. I have a bachelor's degree in history, a master's degree in history, another master's degree in American Studies, and a PhD in American Studies. So I'm not the ordinary local historian, but I'm a historian who specializes in local history. I have 8 current titles in print, some of which are about the White Lake area, and this series is all about White Lake and Montague and Whitehall and the surrounding townships. Prior to the logging, there had been some fur trading in this area, so we still have the remnants of some fur trading cabins on Duck Lake and then along the upper reaches of White Lake. So we did have that, but those were not permanent settlers. For logging, our early loggers were basically scoundrels, I would say. They began logging before they even owned the land. Now some of them had at least applied to buy the land, so I guess you could call them relatively honest, but they were actually stealing off the land before it ever could be owned. They weren't even allowed to own it. So those eventually became the settlements. Logging back in those days was usually done in the vicinity of the mill. So we had the location along White Lake that was Mears' settlement, and he logged this area where I'm standing right now, where I'm sitting right now. They used the old-fashioned, they call it Maine technique for logging, a very small crew, and that would consist of maybe 5, 6, 7 employees. The head of the company would be they called him the setter. He went out and marked the trees that were to be cut down. So he'd take his axe and he'd chop away, causing an indentation in that log. And then would come 2 sawyers. They had a 2-man saw, and they would cut the tree down. And then would come along sappers who would cut it into lengths and cut away all the thick branches. And then someone to load it onto a sled or to get it down to the water so it could be floated to the mill. So this area where I'm sitting right now was logged off probably in the late 30s, early 1840s of any tree that was of merchantable value, which was probably about 10 inches in diameter or bigger. And they were after white pine mostly. After that it would be red pine, maybe hemlock, cedar, and then if necessary they would go after white oak and red oak. So they weren't exclusively pine, but that was the primary tree, the pine tree. Later on, as they moved upstream, these crews got larger and larger, and they were further away from the water. So they usually had several crews working out of a central shanty or a central logging camp, and they would compete with one another. So this crew would go into this neck of the woods, this other crew another neck of the woods, and it became a very orchestrated type of work. These crews would work literally from dawn till dusk. Dawn was usually not quite there by the time they got to they got up in the morning. They get up about 4 or 5 in the morning in the winter, and then by the time they got their breakfast and off to the camp, which might be off to the logging grounds, which might be 2 or 3 miles away, they'd have to walk there. It'd probably be about sunup by the time they got to work. But they'd already been up for 3 hours. So they'll work until noon, and then they'll take a break. The shanty boy cook will come out to give them their lunch. Then they work again until it's almost dark, come back to camp, and that's when they get their dinner. And then they get a little time to themselves, and then it's off to bed because they have to get up in about 4 o'clock the next morning. not much time for this fun and games that we keep hearing about. They'd have these times when they would rollick, and somebody with a fiddle or an accordion or something like that, but that was on the weekend. Saturday night was about the only time they had any time for that kind of shenanigans, because they had Sunday off. And then they could rest up and lick their wounds, maybe a few of the cleaner ones take their clothes off and wash them, but that didn't happen very often. And then it's back to work the next Monday.
You have a lot of choices when it comes to insurance companies, so let me help you narrow them down. Hi, I'm Jenna Potts, your local Farm Bureau insurance specialist with the Durga Insurance Group. We are a company dedicated to serving only Michigan. We know you, we understand you, we protect you. All of us at the Durga Insurance Group live and work right in this area, so we're always nearby. Local agent, local service, and local savings. Come and see us today or visit our website, durgainsuranceGroup.com, to find out more.